Hey, kia ora, Marky here. So welcome, first of all, to my channel. Welcome back those of you who are regulars or maybe even subscribers, or those of you who are viewing this on my Patreon channel as patrons. We love you. We love patrons. So this is a very brave can of worms opening episode on demystifying child sex offenders, because it's a massive subject and it really needs demystifying, because there's loads of wrong assumptions around this and loads of kind of unhelpful ways of thinking about it, really. And it's a very emotive subject, and people tend to have opinions on this. People don't come to this subject as blank slates. So what I would ask you to do, and this will probably run into a series, is to watch with an open mind, really. And hopefully at the end of it, this is a field that I work in, okay, so it's something I know a little bit about, and something that I have a lot to say about, but it's also something that it's a vast subject, so there's things I don't know. I'm still learning. There's lots more to learn, but hopefully I can kind of kill dead in the water some of the myths on this subject. Okay, so that's what this series is going to be about. So it'll probably run into several parts, because it's not a quick and easy subject to talk about, and what I will do is put the whole series on a playlist, so you can find all the episodes easily and watch one after the other if you so wish. And if you do, please give us a like, and if you don't like it, if you don't like what you hear, or you have a different opinion, tell me, put something in the comments. Let's have a discussion, because it's good. But all I ask really is just respectful adult comments, not personal abuse, as some people on these social media tend to get into, and I've got no time for that whatsoever. We're all grown-ups here. That's, I expect, I kind of treat my listeners, my audience, as grown-ups, and that's how I kind of expect it to be, really. So if anyone wants to join the party and they're not a grown-up, they might be sent home with a smack bottom. No, that's probably not a good way to start a video on this subject, is it, really? Anyway, so a couple of things to be aware of, okay, because you might have been drawn to this topic because it's a hot topic and not be familiar with my channel. So this is a channel where I try and debunk myths and present subjects that are often misreported or misunderstood in a clear way. So that's the demystification bit. It's called Mark the Demystifier because I'm called Mark. It's also called Mark the Demystifier and Retroactive Jealousy Support, because that's another specialism that I have, and I do a lot of videos on that. So some people that follow this channel follow it specifically for the retroactive jealousy, and some follow it for the other things, and some follow it for a little bit of both. Okay, so if you look at my other videos, you'll see it's a real mix, a real smorgasbord, which isn't a good thing to do as a YouTuber. The YouTube channels that tend to succeed are the ones that focus on one subject, but I have ADHD, which is something I talk about a lot, and other neurodiverse conditions, and you can see videos on that as well, which means that I have lots of interests. I'm very impulsive, and I tend to want to talk about what I want to talk about when I want to talk about it, so I find it almost impossible to kind of limit myself to one thing, which is what you should do. So I'm aware that this channel might take a little bit longer to grow. I'm also aware that my presenting style is a little bit is quite homely. My filming is certainly very homely, with a kind of shaky camera the wrong way up, and again, I do this because I shoot things on the spur of the moment. So if I was to get the camera stand and everything, I would every time, then it would mean I probably wouldn't end up making the videos. So this, a lot of them are off the cuff as well, but based on a lot of forethought, really. And obviously this is something that I feel that I work in, so I've already got some things to say and some thoughts on this. So that's the kind of the background. Subscribe if you can, because I'm trying to grow this channel, get this message out to more people. Some of the things on this channel are frivolous, and some of them are very important, and messages that could really help people. And I particularly recommend my series on the dangerous effects of internet pornography for men, because guys just don't realise this stuff. This is information that needs to get out there. And while I'm doing kind of the commercials, I also have a Patreon channel where you can sponsor me. So, and details of how to do that down below. So, demystifying child sex offenders. We'll probably talk about sex offenders in general as well, but mainly around child sex offenders. Okay, so So this is kind of an introductory video. I'm not going to get too much into the meat of the subject in this video, but we're going to give you a bit of a few juicy, interesting, hopefully, things to get you thinking, hopefully challenge your thinking, and then we'll go more into the detail of it in later videos. So, okay, first off, okay, there is nothing wrong with being a paedophile. Did you just say that, Marky? Yes, okay, because a paedophile does not mean the same thing as a sex offender. Okay, so a paedophile is somebody who's got the inclination, sexual drive towards children. Okay, there are different definitions of paedophile, by the way, and we could get kind of bogged down in that, so I'm not going to define paedophile right now. You kind of know what. So pedophile, pedo means child, phile means love. Although, you know, arguably, it's not, well, not more than arguably, it's not about loving children. Because if you love a child, then you know, why would you harm them? So not all paedophiles are sex offenders by any means, okay? So some people are innately have, and we believe it's, you know, it could be something, there's a nature and nurture debate here, and there's a strong case for both, and it probably is a mixture of both. So there are lots of people out there who have sexual attraction towards children, who are horrified by this, who suffer enormously with it, and who keep themselves, and more importantly the children around them, safe. So they never act on these desires, and they don't look at child pornography or child exploitation material, as it's now called, which is a better name for it. You know, it says what it is. And there are people who commit sexual offences against children who are not paedophiles. Yes, okay, people can commit sexual offences against children and not be paedophiles. What are you talking about, Marky? Some people are motivated by sadistic desires. Primarily it's around sadism, and they might use sexual abuse as a means of achieving that sadistic hit. But actually, if you explore their sexual orientation, then you wouldn't find that children came into it. Well, surely it would. You're talking nonsense, Mark. Well, there's something called phallometric testing, okay, which is where you basically put a piece of apparatus around someone's penis, and it will measure engorgement. Not necessarily erection, but pre-erection reactions, engorgement, increase of blood flow, the start of an erection, if you like, the first signs of sexual arousal on a physical level. So they've done tests with this kind of thing. So you can actually test people and find that they have no arousal whatsoever to sexualized images of children, but they're still sexually abusing children. Okay, so that's how we kind of know some of this stuff. So I'm going to kind of leave it at that, really. That's the starting point, okay? Which might be shocking enough for many people, because the press are terrible, and I'm going to talk some more about the press and how the press report things in some of the later episodes. But so essentially, the first key thing is, okay, a paedophile is not the same thing as a child sex offender, okay? And potentially, we don't know, we don't, because paedophiles are terrified to come forward and get help, which I think is terrible. And, as a psychotherapist, I'm very, very happy, delighted to work with people who suffer with paedophilia to help them, prevent them from offending. I'd like to do more and more of that kind of work. Because, why wait till abuse has taken place and then pick up the pieces? So that's the first kind of big thing. The second big thing is not everybody that commits child sex abuse is a paedophile, okay? So another example of somebody that commits child sex abuse that isn't a paedophile is, so sometimes, this is all horrific stuff, and I will kind of, put my usual humour into this video, in the way that I do, but I'm also kind of aware that, it's kind of difficult stuff that we're talking about. As a therapist in this field, you develop a black sense of humour, and you do joke about things because you have to stay sane working in these areas. So occasionally, so I don't want you to think that I'm not taking this subject seriously, because I use the occasional bit of humour. And humour is very important in recovery as well. So Then another example of somebody who is not a paedophile who might abuse a child is some offenders will use their children as sexual surrogates. So if they're not able to get sex with their wife, I'm saying kind of wife because most sex offenders are male. We can talk a little bit more about the ones that are female. We'll probably do an episode on that as well, because there are female sex offenders, more than you'd think actually, but the majority are male. And it does happen that somebody, dad is a bit horny, mum isn't available for whatever reason, and some men will, literally use their children as an alternative. Okay, so they're kind of using their children as a masturbatory aid, and obviously, it's horrible, appalling, terrible. But they're not paedophiles. Okay, in some cases, and of course in some cases they are. So it gets really complicated. Okay, so what we're going to try and do is kind of simplify things as much as possible. Obviously things get much more nuanced, much more grey areas. Sometimes it's difficult to see where one thing begins and another ends. Okay, so I'm just going to end by saying that I work with people who have sexually offended, usually people that have gone through the courts and been sentenced. I love doing that. I'm passionate about doing that. It's effective. The evidence is that it works. And I've worked prior to that with a lot of sexual abuse victims or survivors, whichever way you want to look at it. We'll talk some more about that maybe as well. So I've seen the damage that is done to children through sexual abuse, and it is horrific, and it's multifaceted, and it can last a lifetime. And I've seen every end of this, every side of this this field I've seen, if you like, really. So I've worked with perpetrators and I've worked with victims. I'm not condoning this. Sorry, a loud motorcycle going by. New Zealand, they have really loud motorcycles. It's weird. In the UK, you wouldn't be allowed to do that, but apparently there's like a curfew, and if you've got a loud motorcycle, you have to kind of put your motorcycle to bed by a reasonable time, so it doesn't disturb people after a certain hour. This channel is very rambly and homely, and we do go off on tangents, so I'll warn you about that before you embark on this potentially quite long series with me. So what I was trying to say, in my very ADHD kind of way, is that I do not condone sexual abuse, or I don't think it's okay on any level. Okay, if you're aware that it's going on, or you suspect that it's going on among any kind of friends or family or associates, then take action and do something about it. Bring it to the attention of the law. It's something that should be punishable through legal systems, through the justice systems. It's not something that I condone in any way whatsoever. I've seen the absolutely appalling damage that it does. And the other thing is, you can't really compare sexual abuse. You can't really say, well, I was raped as a child and it's affected me this way. And I know I've got a friend that was, they were touched up by a creepy uncle through their clothes or whatever. The damage is psychological, and it can be physical as well. But the damage from one form of abuse may have more impact on that person throughout their life than what we might consider a worse form of abuse. So the person that's been raped as a child might actually have fewer ongoing symptoms than the person that was touched on the outside of their clothes by the dodgy uncle. Okay, so it's important not to dismiss any form of sexual abuse. So it's, I'd really encourage people not to say, well, I was sexually abused, but I was only, because sexual abuse can also take the form of it can be non-contact, it can be conversation, an adult engaging a child in sexualized conversation, or an adult getting a child to look at pornography or look at images, or exposing themselves. It can be absolutely no physical contact whatsoever, and that can still be hugely traumatic to a child. So this is not an apology for child sex offenders. It's illegal in most civilized countries in the world, as it should be, and I'm not suggesting anything different. Okay, But for people that have already gone through the due process of the law, I think it makes absolutely perfect sense to work therapeutically with those people, to help them not to offend, and also to help them to move beyond it and live better lives. Okay, I do believe that as well. That's part of it. Some people will struggle with that because some people will think, these people should be shot or they should be put in prison for life and stuff like that. And you can argue that, you can make an argument for that, but it actually doesn't happen. They don't get shot and they don't get put in prison for life. So as that is the case, I think therapy for people is the ideal way to go, and it works. The statistics are there. So I said this is going to be a short video, and it's turned into a slightly longer one. I have to keep the episodes reasonably short because I can't upload longer videos. So hence that's why these things become series with separate episodes. But as I haven't recorded the next one, it's kind of exciting because you wait for the next episode. And if you've got any comments in between, or any points that you would like me to address as part of this series, stick them in the comments box. Okay, so I won't say, I hope you've enjoyed this video because it's not an enjoyable subject, but I hope you found it helpful. And, I think the journey that we're going to go on together exploring this subject is going to be difficult, it's going to be challenging, but hopefully it's going to be enlightening. And I hope that's helpful for you. Rangi Marie.